This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on 21 December 2020. Okay, first a little bit of an apology. We are running a little bit behind for this week's podcast, and the main reason for that is the nightmare that is Solarwinds. It is taking me a little bit longer to trove through all of the information that I could find out there that would be worth actually discussing. And I've tried to water it down to the best extent possible so we could really get to where we are right now with what we know. So, buckle up and let's get into it. About 18,000 organizations around the world downloaded a network management tool that contained a backdoor that a nation state, most likely, has used to install malware into organizations that used the software the tool provider has. And that tool provider is Solarwinds. The disclosure from the Austin, Texas-based Solarwinds came a day after the United States government revealed a major security breach hitting federal agencies and private companies. The U.S. Department of Treasury, Commerce, Homeland Security were among some of the federal agencies on the receiving end of the hack that gave access to email and other sensitive resources, according to Reuters. As the story has evolved, additional victims now include the U.S. Department of Energy, the National Nuclear Security Administration, the Federal Regulatory Commission, or FERC, the U.S. State Department. Some private entities include Microsoft, Cisco, and Intel. The backdoor infected customers who installed an update from March to June of this past year, according to SolarWinds, with a document they filed last week with the Security and Exchange Commission. The implant was, quote, introduced as a result of a compromise of the Orion software build system and was not present in the source code repository of other Orion products. According to SolarWinds, it says it has about 300,000 Orion customers. SolarWinds recommends all customers immediately upgrade to Orion Platform Release 2020.2.1 HF1, although please check if you are a customer of this and see if they've even further upgraded since the recording of this podcast. They say this is currently available via the SolarWinds customer portal. In addition, SolarWinds has released additional mitigation and hardening instructions on their website. In the event you are unable to follow SolarWinds recommendations, the following are an immediate mitigation technique that could be deployed as a first step to address the risk of a Trojanized SolarWinds software in your environment. If attacker activity is discovered in your environment, SolarWinds is recommending conducting a comprehensive investigation and designing and executing a remediation strategy driven by the investigation findings and details of the impacted environment that you have. Some bullet points that SolarWinds put out that I think is important for everybody to know is ensure that SolarWinds servers are isolated and contained until further review and investigation is conducted. That means essentially disconnect them from your network. This should include blocking all internet egress from SolarWinds servers, right? So don't just unplug them from the internet side, take them off the internet. If SolarWinds infrastructure is not isolated, consider taking the following steps. Restrict scope of connectivity to endpoints from SolarWinds servers, especially those that would be considered Tier 0 or your crown jewel assets. Restrict the scope of accounts that have local administrator privileges on SolarWinds servers, if possible. Block internet egress from servers or other endpoints with SolarWinds software. Consider at a minimum changing passwords for accounts that have access to SolarWinds servers and infrastructure. And based upon further review in your investigation, additional remediation measures actually may still be required. If SolarWinds is used to manage network infrastructure, consider conducting a review of network device configurations for unexpected or unauthorized modifications. And note, this is a proactive measure due to the scope of SolarWinds functionality, not based on any particular findings that the company has already made. So, who do we think did this? Well, there's a hacking group that's tied to the Russian government known as APT-29, and they are the prime suspect in the attacks. The group is also known as, and we've talked about them before, Cozy Bear. Another company calls them Dark Halo. They believe that this is the same group that has attacked government agencies in the past. However, the Kremlin has denied such allegations. FireEye, which we talked about, which looks like their intrusion was just the tip of the iceberg. Here's what they had to say. FireEye discovered a supply chain hack, trojanizing SolarWinds Orion business software updates in order to distribute malware. They are calling that distribution and that malware Sunburst. The attacker's post-compromise activity leverages multiple techniques to evade detection and obscure their activity, but these efforts also offer some opportunities for detection. The campaign for this particular attack is widespread, affecting public and private organizations around the world. FireEye released signatures to detect this threat actor and the supply chain attack into the wild. They are found on their public GitHub page, so please go there and see what you can learn. FireEye products and services can help customers detect and block this attack. However, if you remember, you need to mitigate the things that happen to FireEye and some of their products already, so be careful. After an initial dormant period, according to FireEye, of up to 2 weeks, this malware retrieves and executes commands called jobs that include the ability to transfer files, execute files, profile the system, reboot machines, and disable system services. The malware masquerades itself in network traffic as the Orion Improvement Program, or OIP protocol, and stores reconnaissance results within legitimate plugin configuration files, allowing it to blend in with legitimate SolarWinds activity. The backdoor uses multiple obfuscation block lists to identify forensic and antivirus tools running as processes, services, and drivers. There's a subdomain name generation algorithm, or DGA, that is performed to vary DNS requests. So here's a little bit more tech. The CNAME responses point to the C2, or command and control domain, for the malware to connect to. The IP block of the A record responses controls malware behavior, and the DGA encoded machine domain name is used to selectively target victims. Command and control traffic masquerades as a legitimate Orion Improvement Program, and code hides in plain sight by using fake variable names and tying into legitimate components. Now, as this is all working, if all block list and connectivity checks pass, the sample starts generating domains in a while loop via its DGA. The sample will delay for a random interval between the generation of domains. The interval may be any random value from the ranges from 1 to 3 minutes, 30 to 120 minutes, or an error condition of up to 420 to 540 minutes, or 9 hours. So you may not see anything unless you're looking at a long line of log information in your data. The DNSA record of the generated domains is checked against a hard-coded list of IP address blocks, which control the malware's behavior. Records within the following ranges will terminate the malware and update the configuration key report watcher retry to a value that prevents further execution. And in FireEye's blog post, they have 11 different IP blocks, both in IPv4 and IPv6 address space. So please go check those out so that you can look to see if any of that is anywhere within your network, or anything that you can use to help mitigate or block or restrain this malware. One final note from FireEye is that based on their analysis, they've identified that the compromises are not self-propagating. Each of the attacks require meticulous planning and manual interaction. They continue to investigate this, and they're sharing the information as they can find it. So if this is a nation state and it requires that level of manual interaction with their malware, that means that they know the targets they want, and they are willing to invest the time, energy, and resource to get to them. Be careful. What is the U.S. government doing in response to all this? Well, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has issued an emergency directive instructing federal civilian agencies to disconnect SolarWinds systems. Agencies that use SolarWinds products were required to submit a completion report to CISA by midday, Monday, December 14th. Agencies were also ordered to wait for CISA guidance before applying any fixes to SolarWinds. And this was outlined in their Emergency Directive 21-01. Also, The U.S. National Security Council, or NSC, invoked a cybersecurity emergency process established under the Obama administration. Presidential Policy Directive 41 established a unified coordination group to serve as the, quote, primary method for coordinating between and among federal agencies in response to a significant cyber incident, as well as for integrating private sector partners into incident response efforts as appropriate, unquote. Now, here's another problem. CISA has evidence of additional initial access vectors other than the SolarWinds Orion platform. However, they are still investigating those, and they have stated that they will issue an alert as new information becomes available. Additional technical details, including info on the initial infection vectors, tactics, techniques, and procedures used in this campaign, mitigation measures, and indicators of compromise are all available in CISA's alert, and the alert is AA20-352A. So go to their website and look for that. Okay, now digging a little bit deeper and not directly related to the hack activity. Two major SolarWinds investors sold $280 million worth of stock just days before the breach of the company's software update was disclosed. SolarWinds' stock price dropped more than 20% in the days following the disclosure. The large transaction shortly before the announcement of the breach is likely to prompt a little bit of an investigation from the SEC. The investors have issued a joint statement saying they were not aware of the breach when they sold the stock. Now, out of those 300,000 potential customers that SolarWinds says they have, it's at least confirmed at this point in time that 18,000 organizations downloaded the maligned backdoor and have it installed in their networks. If not all 18,000 organizations disconnect the SolarWinds equipment and infrastructure from their internet and from their intranet, this is likely to never go away. Think of this as your COVID for technology. It's going to be bad. And if this is a nation state, if it is Russia, they know what they're doing. A high level of sophistication is occurring. This is something that should be taken exceptionally seriously. And yet, there's more that happened this past week, as if SolarWinds wasn't enough. The FBI issues a Doppler payer warning. The FBI has issued a private industry notification, or PIN, warning of Doppler ransomware attacks against organizations operating critical infrastructure, such as healthcare, emergency services, and education. The PIN warns that the Doppler ransomware operators have called victims to coerce them into paying the demands and have also threatened to release stolen data if they are not paid. Doppler emerged as a forked version of BitPayer, also known as FireEye, both believed to be the work of hacker group TA505, the threat actor best known for its infamous Didrix, Trojan, and Locky ransomware families. The Bureau has also warned businesses that the threat actor behind Doppler engages in what's known as double extortion. Prior to encrypting target systems with ransomware, they exfiltrate the data they later abuse for extortion or to pressure the victim into paying the ransom. Flaws have been discovered in maritime communication software suites. Researchers from Pentest Partners found numerous vulnerabilities in the DoLog connection suite, which ships use for communications, including email, file transfers, and internet access while at sea. The flaws include undocumented admin accounts with hard-coded passwords, SQL injection, and Flash-based two-factor authentication conducted in a FlashZero-based client-side app. Well, it looks like Flash hasn't completely died just yet. It was also found that the Oracle database underpinning the suite used an outdated MD5 hash with no salting, meaning the researchers were able to brute force themselves in within 10 minutes. The FTC has sent orders to 9 social media companies seeking details about how they, quote, use, track, estimate, and derive personal and demographic information, how they determine which ads and other content are shown to consumers, and whether they apply algorithms or data analytics to personal information. Part of the inquiry also is how they measure, promote, and research user engagement, and how these companies' practices affect children and teens. The companies have 45 days to reply. CISA has issued a different warning of a trio of serious vulnerabilities in Medtronic MyCare Link medical devices. These flaws could be exploited to modify or fabricate data from certain implanted cardiac devices and remotely execute code to gain control of said devices paired to vulnerable MCL smart patient reader devices. Medtronic, for their part, has developed a firmware update to address the flaws, so update your cardiac devices, folks, unless you want them to stop working. A U.S. district judge in the state of Louisiana has sentenced Colby Trent DeForey to a 3.5-year prison sentence for stealing and abusing patient data from healthcare.gov. The defendant previously pleaded guilty to, quote, intentionally accessing a protected computer in excess of authorization for the purpose of commercial advantage and private financial gain, and in furtherance of the commission of a felony. The defendant worked as a seasonal employee for a company that supported the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The defendant used the stolen data to apply for credit cards and loans, resulting in nearly $600,000 in damages. And finally, because 2020 has been a cruel, cruel year, you can't even go on vacation. Norwegian Cruise Line link hit with a cyber attack. Norwegian Cruise Line Hunter Gruten has acknowledged that its systems were hit with a cyber attack last weekend, so the weekend prior to December 14th. The incident appears to have affected the company's global infrastructure. The website and email systems were down as of the 14th of December. Quote, "It's a serious attack," the company's chief digital officer stated. "The entire worldwide digital infrastructure of Hurtigruten seems to have been hit." The company said it had alerted the relevant authorities when the attack was detected, and the attack seems to be ransomware, according to the company. And this is coming at a time when the entire cruise line industry is obviously reeling from having to shut down due to our pesky little human virus friend, COVID-19. There are estimates that the entire cruise line industry could lose somewhere on the order of $30 billion in revenue due to coronavirus and those shutdowns. So cyber attacks that are prohibiting these companies from functioning in any capacity aren't helping the matters at all. That's all for the news this week. I'm your professor of cyber risk. We'll talk again soon.